welcome to SVGTV News for Tuesday, February 26, 2019. I am Yvette Bowens with the details. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has given SVG positive reviews, including a projected economic growth for the next 2 years. However, the IMF said the growth outlook is dependent on if the country's external and domestic risk factors do not come into play. The IMF also made several recommendations that the government should take to build fiscal buffers. Larissa Pugsley-Kidd tells us more in this report.
The economy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been recovering following heavy rains, flooding and landslides which affected the growth of the economy in late 2016 and early 2017. This is according to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in its report released yesterday following the conclusion of a consultation with SVG on February 15th this year. Also in the report, the executive directors commended the authorities in SVG for successfully reinvigorating the country's economy. The IMF report said the opening of the Argyle International Airport, which has attracted increased tourists, is one of the key contributing factors that aided in the country's recovery. The report stated that over the past year, inflation has remained at around 2 to 3% and has seen progressive increase in its GDP and projects at 2.3% in 2019 and 2020. However, this is assuming the tourism and investment growth remains steady. Further, the report pointed out that the outlook is subject to both external and domestic risks. External risks, the report states, include weaker than expected global growth, tighter global financial conditions, and higher oil prices. Domestic risks include more severe and frequent natural disasters, the loss of correspondent banking relationships, and materialization of financial sector risks. There is also an upside potential, such as the successful completion of the geothermal power plant. It was noted that SVG continues to face challenges in terms of making economic growth more sustainable, reducing public debt, and increasing resilience to natural disasters. The directors of the IMF stressed the importance of advancing structural reforms to raise longer-term growth. They also urged the authorities to capitalize on the growth opportunities created by the new airport and recommended vigorously implementing policies to foster private sector activity. The IMF directors welcomed the government's commitment to meeting the 60% of GDP debt target by 2030 and underscored the need for fiscal consolidation that does not jeopardize economic growth. They recommended prioritizing capital projects taking into account capacity and budget constraints and seeking concessional financing. The IMF also encouraged taking additional fiscal measures, including broadening the tax base and reforming the pension system. It also welcomed the establishment of the contingency fund as an important instrument to protect public finances from the impact of natural disasters and climate change. It, however, underscored the need to legislate the contingency fund's governance and operational framework to ensure its effectiveness and transparency. The directors also suggested expanding the coverage of disaster insurance, especially against floods. Strengthening disaster preparedness, reviewing the National Emergency and Disaster Act, updating river basin flood risk maps, and enhancing public education and awareness were other recommendations made by the IMF, which also pointed out in its report that actions are needed to develop human capital. The report stated that over the last decade, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has achieved universal secondary education. Despite this attainment, the unemployment rate remains persistently high, reflecting few employment opportunities provided by large companies, but also labor skill mismatches. The IMF further recommends that the government continues its efforts to address the labor skill problem by improving the labor market policies in place, including vocational education and training, apprenticeships, and job counseling. In this light, the report noted that the effectiveness of the Technical and Vocational Education and Training (TVET) program should be periodically reviewed. In addition, containing increases in the minimum wage will remain important to improve competitiveness. Reporting for SVGTV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves is among Caribbean community CARICOM leaders attending a two-day intersessional summit which opened today in St. Kitts. The meeting is overshadowed by the unfolding economic and political events in Venezuela, Guyana, and Haiti, as well as security issues and continued moves by Europe to blacklist the region. CARICOM has sought to play a leading role in trying to defuse the situation in the South American country, where opposition leader Juan Guaido, who declared himself interim president, is leading the effort to remove President Nicolas Maduro from office. Guaido has the backing of the United States and several other countries, while Maduro, who was sworn into office last month, is backed by Russia, China, Cuba, and several others. CARICOM chairman and host Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris has maintained that the 15-member regional grouping's policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela. PM Gonzalez is leading a 4-member delegation to the intersessional meeting. The other members of the delegation are Minister of Finance Camilo Gonzalez, CARICOM Ambassador Alan Alexander, and Budget Director Ken Morris. It is important to understand the science of tsunamis in order to adequately prepare for them. So says Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, Michelle Forbes, as she addressed the opening of a tsunami inundation modeling and evacuation mapping workshop at NEMO's conference room yesterday. The workshop brought together stakeholders from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, UNESCO, as well as other local stakeholders, including the Coast Guard. Forbes said the global attention on tsunamis has increased since 2004, and NEMO has been working with regional and international bodies to learn more about and prepare for tsunamis. She said while there is a low threat of tsunamis from the underwater volcano Kikimjeni, it is important to prepare for all hazards.
Indonesia, the underground volcano that generated large tsunamis, and this is a first for the scientists. I know Chris and Carolina and Carlos and those scientists are kind of scratching their heads after that event last year. How do we model an underground volcano, the tsunamis from them? And I note for this year the focus will be on Kikimjeni for the region on March 14. We will not take part in it on March 14 because it's a national holiday, but we'll take part on it a week later, but also using the scenarios. And it's something that it is still a bit unknown in how do we model tsunami waves from an underground volcano, but from the models that we are seeing, within 8 minutes the tsunami waves will be up on St. Vincent. What about Union Island? Maybe a minute. So it is important for us to understand the tsunami science and what we are going to do here over the next 5 days in terms of modeling, using the science, using our bathymetric data and all the baseline information that we have to generate the maps, generate the evacuation routes, and most importantly, to educate our people about tsunamis and the possible or the potential threats that they may pose to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Forbes said as part of their activity, stakeholders will be visiting various communities to sensitize persons on the science behind tsunamis and the importance of having an evacuation plan.
Now, the first 4 days will be highly technical. It will be doing a lot of modeling with Chris and Carolina, and Carlos will take the lead, and then we're going to bring in some other stakeholders on Thursday, Friday, more looking at the evacuation mapping and how do we go about doing the mapping, because that is where the community needs to understand where you took the science from to where you determine the evacuation map and the routes for the various communities. We will also have the community meeting, the launch of the project in the community on Thursday evening in Calico at 5 o'clock at the Calico Hard Court, and we want to encourage everyone here and also all the partners to be at that launch on Thursday. So it's a lot of work that will be happening over the next 9 months, I say, with a lot of the mapping, working with the GIS and planning unit, physical planning department, ensuring that they understand the modeling, they can do the modeling, so that when this project wraps up, we can continue our work in St. Vincent and Grenadines, work with more communities, and continue our education on tsunamis.
Meanwhile, UNESCO SVG Secretary General Janeil Henry Rhodes said it is important for small island states such as SVG to properly implement climate change adaptation measures. She said there is one way to help build stronger, more resilient communities.
We have to use our scarce resources more efficiently, adapting building codes for future climate change conditions and extreme weather, building flood defenses, choosing tree species and forestry practices that are less vulnerable to storms and fires. It has been shown that if we plan well, all the adaptation action saves money, and lives. Let us not forget that the onus is also on each individual to change his way of life to accommodate the very changes that he has demanded of the environment. So home gardening, reusable shopping bags are just a few measures that we can use to help facilitate this change.
The sanctions imposed on Venezuela by the U.S. should stay in place in order to effect change in the South American country. That's the view of former Prime Minister Sir James Mitchell as he spoke on Boom FM today about the ongoing economic and political turmoil taking place in Venezuela. Sir James said friendly countries have a responsibility to ensure that Venezuela stays on the right track and that sooner or later the sanctions will inspire persons to make the necessary sacrifice to effect change.
In many places don't work. Sanctions in many places.
But who feels it the most? Is it not the people on the ground who's most affected now?
Are you telling me we should not have imposed sanctions in South Africa? Come on, answer that if you're brave. Tell me yes or no. That's my answer to that question. All this business of saying you're hurting people, when people reach a certain stage, they are willing to make certain sacrifices for themselves and others. And the sacrifices that individuals make change this world. It's time we got to separate the cowards from the go-alongers and the people who stand for principle.
Sir James accused Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of being a dictator and praised the international community for being careful about military intervention.
That disturbs me. And I will continue to lobby for international opinion to deal with Venezuela. I think that we have to keep the pressure on unrelentingly. And there are many things that can be done to keep that pressure. The European Union today has taken a decision that they do not want military intervention. They want to keep on the pressure. Wonderful idea, because it is obvious that Maduro will be so reckless that he can create a lot of confusion by we probably have some missiles from Russia and so on that he can send into Bogota and other countries and so on and create chaos. He is as a man who doesn't care about life. He is a terrorist, and I am not going to be in support of that.
Sir James said there needs to be free and fair elections in Venezuela. He said there are security issues which neighboring countries should also be concerned about.
Your neighboring head of government as persona non grata has reached a point now where the collapse of relations between Venezuela and both Brazil and Colombia. All those are the things that are going on. But we have got to take a stand, not just for democracy. There are a lot of guns moving out from Venezuela into Trinidad. People are boats are even grabbing fishermen in Trinidad and extracting ransom. They're so poor, you hear about ransom being millions of dollars. They grab a fisherman and say they want $500 to release him. That's how bad things are down there.
Vice President for the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Cooperative Credit Union, Curtis King, said a proper honoring system needs to be in place to recognize the stalwart contribution of nation builders. At the launch of the National School Band Showcase, King paid tribute to cultural stalwart Dr. Edgar Doc Adams, who passed away on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and was laid to rest yesterday. King said that Dr. Adams made a significant contribution to the country, especially in the development of the culture, and he should be honored for his work.
But this man was also a poet, a storyteller, and he could sing musician also. But students, I don't want you to miss the point that he was also an academic. Having pursued medicine, specializing in eye care. But he combined all these things to provide us with what I would consider to be a significant contribution to our own development. It is for that reason why I use this opportunity to open the debate and to continue to call for us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to establish a proper national honoring system. I'm not in an exclusive club, in that there are those who came before me who have made the same call. And I'm sure there are others who would come after me and make the same call. The point is, we need to show as a people that we appreciate our own when they make the effort to contribute to our development.
King said that Dr. Adams was also a very good writer, and one of his well-known publications, The People on the Move, was once used as a textbook at the secondary school level, and he would love to see more of Dr. Adams's publications given the same recognition.
Dr. Adams has attempted in his own small way to put together our story as a people and share it with all concerned, especially so our young people. And I'm in a privileged position in the sense that I remember one of his books, The People on the Move, when we had what was then referred to as the St. Vincent and the Grenadines History Teachers Association. We piloted a project where Dr. Adams' book, People on the Move, was used as the text in the schools. For whatever reasons, the Ministry of Education, I would say, well, let me put it this way, moved to another alternative. In other words, that program was stopped because we did not receive official support for the continuation. And I know, as headmaster of the grammar school, I ensured that the book was there even as a reference text, and it is still there.
Meanwhile, Minister of Tourism, Sports and Culture Cecil Sesmaki, who addressed yesterday's launching event of the school's band's showcase, extended his condolence to Dr. Adams' family and friends.
So what I'm saying here, and Curtis put it very nicely, not only would you have opportunities academically, but you can mesh that, and he made reference to Doc and how he successfully was able to do and achieve that in terms of success. Doc was my uncle, so I also want to extend support to the family, well, to myself as well, I'm a family, and point to Doc as being really a person who all musicians and cultural people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines could have referred to, and they did, and got information that assisted in shaping any project or any mission that an individual went forward with.
Meanwhile, Queen's Counsel Parnell Campbell on his Law and You program last evening on SVG-TV paid tribute to Dr. Edgar Adams. He extended condolences to Dr. Adams' family and friends and called Dr. Adams his hero.
I've known Dr. Adams since it must have been about 1961, when I was a member of Tim Daisy's group, St. Vincent Players, And he had recently come back from England. He had started a dance group. And I can tell you, the best piece of dancing I have seen on stage in my life, live, was Edgar Adams performing the role, ironically enough, of the devil in a production of his dance group at Memorial Hall. He was just stunningly beautiful. Since then, I have known him as a writer and in other capacities. And all of my children, assuming they read the books, have been recipients of every title that Dr. Adams published in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had an arrangement. I said to him, Doc, whenever you write a book, just bring about 7 copies to my office. And he would do that, and I would ask him to autograph my copy and autograph copies for all of my children, and I would duly present my children with his writings.
Campbell said that Dr. Adams brought such positive energy to the country that he would be hard to replace.
He was a fountain of knowledge, a man of integrity, a man whom it would be difficult for us to replace. A true nation builder, Dr. Edgar Adams. In fact, I knew him professionally. There was a time when he outfitted me with my spectacles at his spectacle shop, because that was his profession, optometrician.
The Carnival Development Corporation is continuing its focus on developing the VinciMass product. So says Chairman Ricardo Adams, as he highlighted the work the organization will be engaged in to take VinciMass to the next level at last Saturday's media launch and sashing ceremony of the Miss SVG Contestants 2019. Adams said this year the CDC will be hosting a carnival symposium to sensitize stakeholders on the many tangible benefits of getting involved in the cultural and performing arts.
Continue to pay attention to the youth in Carnival, because we think that it is important to develop the youth, to develop the future of VinciMass. One of the things that we're going to do this year, we're going to have a Carnival symposium, and that is going to happen in April, where we're going to invite folks in the creative industries in to come and understand that culture. A lot of people think that culture and art is something that you do and you remain struggling because you have your passion for culture and art. But there is also the business opportunity of culture and art. And if we are professional about the way we approach it, we can take our culture and our creative talent to be real revenue earners for us and for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Adams said while mass bands continue to do well, there is more work that needs to be done in the area of marketing. He said the corporation will be assisting the mass bands in this area.
The mass bands continue to offer the full range of traditional and ultra-modern options, and they are well on the way to making sure masqueraders have a great time again on the road this year. In fact, Blondie Bird is already out of the blocks with the launch of his band this evening, and I have seen costumes already in the newspapers from Adrenaline Mass Band. So they are not waiting until after Easter to tell you what they're doing. They are ready, and as evidenced on the road a couple of days ago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is ready. We have challenged the mass bands to make social media marketing a stronger part of their program of marketing this year, and we are going to make an active effort to support them in that regard.
The CDC chairman said the school bands and rural carnival events will not be left out. He said work is underway to use the rural events to showcase the unique culture of many communities across SVG.
We continue to support the development of the school and community steel orchestras. I'm also excited about the school band program, which we hope will spawn a number of new and exciting bands. And this year, the launch is going to be on Monday coming, And there are 18 school bands that are going to be participating this year. Rural carnivals continue to develop structures so that they can become feeder systems into the national festivals and a breeding ground for new talent. And I've heard that there are a couple of other pageants that are going to happen this year, and that is what we want to see. We want to see the rural carnival move from being a Juve and Sunday evening jump up to being something that encompasses the culture of Vinci-Mas, so that every rural carnival can have its own unique flavor. Something that says that I'm from North Leeward, and when you come, you experience the different culture of North Leeward in the context of Vinci-Mas. So we're really looking for exciting things from Rural Carnival this year.